Hello, today we are going to discuss George Simmel as one of our classical sociological thinkers. George Simmel's approach to sociology is placed in the context of the organicist sociologies of Comte and Spencer and the German school of idealist philosophy. At the center of this approach is the contested concept of society, which forms the subject matter of our discipline. One approach, to draw from Kurt Wolff, exaggerates the concept of society and the other minimizes it. The organicist approach, one that can be seen as exaggerating the concept of society, emphasizes on the fundamental continuity between nature and society. Society was seen as qualitatively similar to the biological, and social processes were seen as again qualitatively similar, although more complex than biological processes. Therefore, the methods that were applicable in the natural sciences to study nature could also be applied for the study of human society and culture. Sociology was regarded as the master science through which one could discover the laws governing all social developments. The German school of idealist philosophy opposed this organicist approach. For this school, the two sciences, one natural and one social, were qualitatively different. The human or the moral sciences were absolutely different from the natural science. That is what the school argued. Human events, the school argues, are unique. These events could only be described and recorded. No regularities, regularities which we know are a concern of the natural sciences, no regularities can be established in the sphere of human culture, because the domain of human culture is an autonomous domain and fundamentally different from the natural domain. Therefore, the methods applicable to these different domains would also be different. This school suggests that as against the nomothetic method of the natural sciences concerned with establishing general laws governing the universe, the method that is to be used in the domain of human culture is the ideographic method. This method is concerned with unique events and stands against the attempt to establish general laws through the study of regularities of phenomena and behavior. The school further argued that society was merely a convenient label which is actually devoid of any substance or reality. Hence, sociology had no real object of study. Society did not exist outside or in addition to the individuals who composed it. Using the ideographic method, when the individuals and the historical circumstances and their actions therein are investigated, this German school claimed that nothing else remains for sociology as a science of society to investigate. Simmel rejected both these approaches. Taking a dialectical approach, and the dialectical method is central to Simmel's sociology, Simmel contends that we cannot be satisfied with admitting either that individuals alone are real or that society alone is real, merely because all human life occurs in society. We cannot do without either of the two ideas, for society is among the least dubious and most legitimate contents of human knowledge, and the individual, though not an ultimate cognitive unit, is a presumably ineradicable object of experience. To explain further, society is merely the name for a number of individuals connected by interaction. Hence, society consists of an intricate web of multiple relations between individuals who are in constant interaction with one another. the larger structures over and above the individual, such as the family, the clan, the state, are all crystallizations of this interaction, even though they attain autonomy and a permanence beyond the individuals, thereby confronting the individual as imposing alien powers and structures. Hence, for Simmel, sociation is the subject matter or the field of study in sociology. Sociation is the particular patterns and forms in which humans associate and interact with one another. He considered the attempt of sociology to be a totalistic science of society, of anything human, as a self-defeating enterprise. There can be no such totalistic social science, just as there is no total science of all matter. Science must study dimensions or aspects of phenomena rather than global totalities. The legitimate subject matter of sociology lies in the description and analysis of particular forms of human interaction and their crystallization in group characteristics. Sociology asks what happens to men and by what rules they behave, not in so far as they unfold their understandable individual existences in their totalities, but in so far as they form groups and are determined by their group existence because of interaction. Although all human behavior is behavior of individuals, much of it can be explained in terms of the individual's group affiliation as well as the constraints imposed upon the individual by particular forms of interaction. What are the sociological problems for Simmel? As one sociological problem, Simmel asks the general question of whether sociology, in the course of investigating historical phenomena, can hope to establish laws. Another problem is that of group power. A third one is constituted by the value relations between collective and individual conduct, action, and thought. General sociology is then the study of the whole of historical life insofar as it is formed societally. While Simmel, as we have seen in the previous slides, considered the larger institutionalized structures as a legitimate field of inquiry in sociology, he focused more on interactions among the atoms of society. His more perennial concern was to study those fundamental patterns of interaction among individuals that underlie the larger social formations. The method he advocated and practiced was to focus upon the perennial and limited number of forms such interaction might take. We now come to formal sociology. The forms of social interaction as the domain central to or peculiar to sociological inquiry can be seen as Simmel's response to those who denied the possibility of a science of society. While Simmel agreed that human society is of course marked by unique events, if one is to use the lens of a sociologist, one could study the uniformities underlying these unique events. For Simmel, the sociologist is not studying the particular individual, but how the individuals and their actions reflect the underlying processes of cooperation and conflict, subordination and superordination, for example, processes which constitute the building blocks for the larger institutional structures. Through this, Simmel was trying to develop a geometry of social life. Formal sociology isolates form from the heterogeneity of content of human association. It attempts to show that however diverse the interests and purposes that give rise to specific associations among humans, the social forms of interaction in which these interests and purposes are realized may be identical. For example, both war and profit making involve cooperation. Inversely, identical interests and purposes may crystallize into different forms. Economic interests may be realized in competition as well as in planned cooperation, and aggressive drives may be satisfied in various forms of conflict, from gang warfare to legal battles. So, by applying the perspective of formal sociology, aspects of phenomena which are otherwise not readily observable can be extracted from reality, analyzed and brought to life. In this way, it becomes possible to analyze and compare phenomena that may appear to be radically different in content. We can analyze and bring to light the fundamental similarities in the structural arrangements. We can give an example here, and we cite the example following Koser. Leader-follower relations may be seen to be structurally the same both in deviant juvenile gangs and in conformist scout troops. Simmel is not stating that forms have a distinct and separate existence from their content. No. He is arguing that forms inhere in their content. They on their own have no independent reality. Concrete phenomena could be studied in a variety of perspectives. Analysis of the limited number of forms that could be extracted from the immensely large and multiple social contents has the potential to contribute significant insights into social life that would be unavailable to those who only concern themselves with the concrete reality and limit themselves to the descriptions of the same. Simmel's forms, or his formal sociology, are complemented by the social types he constructed. The stranger, the poor, the adventurer, the mediator, the renegade are some of the social types that he describes. Here in this lecture, we are going to focus on the stranger and the poor as two types. Simmel conceives of each particular social type as being cast by the specifiable relations and expectations of others. The type becomes what he is through his relations with others who assign him a particular position and expect him to behave in specific ways. The characteristics are seen as attributes of the social structure. Simmel insists that forms found in reality are never pure. Pure forms are constructs, that is, typical relationships never exist and they can never be completely realized. Much like Weber's ideal types, Simmel's forms are not generalizations about aspects of reality, but they tend to heighten or to exaggerate so as to bring out configurations and relations which underlie reality but are not factually actualized in it. We now look at the type of the stranger. The stranger is not just a wanderer who comes today and goes tomorrow, having no specific structural position. On the contrary, the stranger is a person who comes today and stays tomorrow. The stranger is fixed within a particular spatial group, but the position is determined by the fact that the stranger does not belong to it from the beginning and that the person may leave again. The stranger is an element of the group itself while not being fully part of it. This gives the stranger a unique position and ability. The stranger is therefore assigned a role that no other members of the group can play. The stranger as a confidant. By virtue of the stranger's partial involvement in group affairs, they can attain an objectivity that other members cannot reach. To quote from Simmel, he is not radically committed to the unique ingredients and peculiar tendencies of the group and therefore approaches them with the specific attitude of objectivity. Moreover, being distant and near at the same time, the stranger will often be called on as a confidant. Confidences that must be withheld from more closely related persons can be given to the stranger just because with him they are not likely to have consequences. The stranger as a judge. In similar ways, the stranger may be a better judge between conflicting parties than full members of the group, since he is not tied to either of the contenders. Not being bound by commitments which could prejudice his perception, understanding and evaluation of the given, he is the ideal intermediary in the traffic of goods as well as in the traffic of emotions. The unity of nearness and remoteness, you see again the dialectical method of Simmel being visible here, involved in every human relations is organized in the phenomenon of the stranger in a way that in the relationship to him distance means that he who also is far is actually near. For to be a stranger is naturally a very positive relation. It is a specific form of interaction. Now, we move on to the type of the poor. The poor is another social type. The poor as a social type emerges only when society recognizes poverty as a special status and assigns specific persons requiring assistance to that category. This assigning itself is a form of social interaction. Simmel argues, and we quote, that the fact that someone is poor does not mean that he belongs to the specific social category of the poor. It is only from the moment that the poor are assisted that they become part of a group characterized by poverty. This group does not remain united by interaction among its members, as is the case with most groups, but by the collective attitude which society as a whole adopts toward it. Poverty cannot be defined in itself as a qualitative state, but only in terms of the social reaction resulting from a specific situation. Poverty is a unique sociological phenomenon. A number of individuals who, out of a purely individual fate, occupy a specific organic position within the whole, but this position is not determined by this fate and condition, but rather by the fact that others attempt to correct this condition. On accepting this assistance, therefore, the private trouble of the poor person now becomes a public issue. The poor came to be viewed not by what they do, the criteria ordinarily used in social categorization, but by virtue of what is done to them. Society creates the social type of the poor and assigns them a peculiar status that is marked only by negative attitudes, by what the status holders do not have, by a lack. The stranger and the poor, as well as Simmel's other types, are assigned their position by virtue of specific interactive relations. They are societal creations and must act out their assigned roles. As we have said, now we move on more to the dialectical method. We have said earlier that Simmel's sociology is very much informed by the dialectical approach. So, his sociology brings out the dynamic interconnectedness and the conflicts between the social units he analyzes. Throughout his work, Simmel stresses both the connections and the tensions between the individual and society. He sees individuals as products of society, as links in the social process. Yet, the socialized individual always remains in a dual relation with society. He is incorporated within it and yet stands against it. The individual is at the same time within society and outside it. He exists for society as well as for himself. The individual is determined at the same time as he is determining. He is acted upon at the same time that he is self-actuating. To Simmel, association always involves harmony and conflict, attraction and repulsion, love and hatred. He saw human relations as characterized by ambivalence, and he believed that precisely those who are connected in intimate relations are likely to harbor for one another not only positive but also negative sentiments. For Simmel, an entirely harmonious group could not exist empirically. It would not partake of any kind of life process. It would be incapable of change and development. Moreover, Simmel stressed it is naive to view as negative those forces that result in conflict and as positive those that make for consensus. Simmel, for example, states that safety valves allowing participants to blow off steam can help social relations to endure. Without these, social relations would not endure. Association is always the result of both categories of interaction. Both are positive ingredients, structuring all relationships and giving them enduring form. Therefore, Simmel never dreamt of a frictionless social universe or of a society from which clashes and contentions among individuals and groups would be forever banned. As an example of this, we can look at his concept of superordination and subordination. Simmel considered the individual's social actions not in themselves, but in relation to actions of other individuals and to particular structures or processes. Domination does not lie in the unilateral imposition of the superordinate's will upon the subordinate, but that it involves reciprocal action. What appears to be the exercise of absolute power by some and the acceptance by others is deceptive. Power conceals an interaction and exchange which transforms the pure one-sidedness of superordination and subordination into a sociological form. Thus, the superordinate's action cannot be understood without reference to the subordinate and vice versa. The action of one can only be analyzed by reference to the action of others, since the two are part of a system of interaction that constrains both of them. Attempts at analyzing social action without such reference would have been rejected by Simmel as examples of what he called the fallacy of separateness. Simmel details the particular ways in which various types of group structures are associated with different forms of superordination and subordination, distinguishing, for example, between leveling and gradation. If a number of individuals are equally subjected to one individual, Simmel argued they are themselves equal. Such leveling favors and is favored by despotic rulers. Despots try to level their subjects, and conversely, highly developed leveling easily leads to despotism. On the other hand, strong intermediate gradations among a ruler's subjects tend to cushion the impact and weaken the hold over them. Although intermediate powers may increase inequalities in the subject population, they shield the individual from the direct powers of the ruler. A pyramidal form of social gradation, whether it develops under the plan of the ruler or results from the usurpation of some of his power by subordinates, gives every one of its elements a position both lower and higher than the next rungs in the hierarchy. In this way, each level, except the very highest and the very lowest, is subordinate to the authorities above it and at the same time is superordinate to the rungs beneath. Dependence on some persons is compensated by the authority over others. There are some more of Simmel's sociology which we could not bring in this discussion, particularly his discussion on the significance of numbers in social life, where he looks at two kinds of group formations, beginning with the dyad and the triad, and how through the triad bigger groups come into existence. We have to focus here on his dialectical method, his approach to sociology, how sociology could be a science of society, the social types, social forms, and superordination and subordination as forms of interaction. This lecture was based primarily from Coaser's Masters of Sociological Thought and the volume by Kurt Wolff, The Sociology of George Simmel. Thank you.